Hi, I'm Randy Dunn. I work in Zebra's RFID Business Unit. I'm the Director of Business Development. I've been in the RFID industry for as long as I can remember and have seen a lot of the milestones in the RFID industry. I actually happen to work for one of the country's leading loss prevention providers, and so I also got to learn a lot about loss prevention, asset protection. So RFID is a really interesting technology. It is the oldest brand new technology in retail. RFID has long range, non-line of sight, serialized data. And when you start to think about the problems of detecting tags leaving a store, you need to be able to see them from a distance. You gotta know they're gonna be concealed, so you're not gonna get line of sight. And you need a unique identifier so that you can actually create a record of what's leaving the store. So, for many of the same reasons that RFID has been a big and important technology in inventory management, it's all about information. There's a saying they teach you when you go maybe your first day of business school classes, you can't manage what you don't measure. And that has, I think, been kind of the core challenge in asset protection. The world of loss with RFID has actually been kind of framed under the old discussion of there are, four buckets of loss. There's external theft, there's internal theft, there's your vendors are taking advantage of you, and then there is administrative error. I think what RFID does is it shines a light on all four of those things. But equally important is, finding the discrepancies between a retailer and their suppliers, and then being able to just root out and uncover with some certainty, with documentation and evidence, errors that can get resolved. That whole ability to do that is kind of total loss at the corporate level, which is really kind of the next big idea in asset protection. RFID tags are only as good as the places that they can be read. And historically, RFID was introduced into retail for inventory management. And the way that the technology got leveraged was handheld cycle counts, basically presence detection. But as you start to think about the more advanced forms of data capture, right, fixed readers or ceiling mounted autonomous readers that are reading all the time, the ability to push that deeper into the supply chain and really be able to capture data without impacting supply chain speed has become a really, really interesting area for RFID. Loss prevention tools historically have been event-based, and RFID is information-based. So the classic, the electronic article surveillance, 3 steps out the door, your action window closed, right? If you didn't catch them going out the door, there was no information to go pursue, that particular event. With RFID, all that gets documented, serial numbers get recorded, video can be indexed to go with that event, and now you've got basically a case that's full of credible information that allows retailers and law enforcement to go, pursue the bad guys and, ideally recover the inventory. RFID has the ability to create visibility. How you use visibility is a choice that every retailer has to make. And I do believe most retailers are, kind of landing on the side of, we want to protect our shoppers, our best customers' privacy more than we want to uncover who the bad folks are. Friction is the tool that retailers use to slow down thieves, but it needs to be used judiciously because green shoppers want no friction. They want convenience. And so, having information and being able to target how you apply your friction in the store to slow down the bad shoppers is something that, those predictive models are being developed today. I think, as you go even further, right, you'll see artificial intelligence being trained to go dynamically adjust predictions as new information becomes available. Most people that are using RFID at the exit don't have RFID at the point of sale. So the point of sale is still exactly as it's been for years. And what's happening is people are recording for the first time what's actually leaving the store and then find creative ways to compare that against what they believe has been sold. And the goal with RFID in this loss detection mode isn't to find all the shrink events, it's to find the big shrink events. RFID's core mission, as it got to be a mainstream technology, was about understanding and managing inventory accuracy and inventory visibility, what you have and where it's at, because it could count 50 times faster than you could count the same number of items with a barcode scanner. And so think about that. 50 times faster means if you're doing one inventory a year, now you could do one inventory a week for the same amount of labor costs. That was game changing in the retail industry, where what they thought they had and what they really had distorted at a rate of about 3% per month. So think about that. When you closed your books in January, that was the most accurate your inventory was going to be. And by the time you got to your golden quarter, to the fourth quarter, what you thought you had and what you really had could be as many as 30 points off. For the last few years, people have thought about RFID as let's count the stuff, let's upgrade our back-end system. And I think our shopper survey showed this, that the store is looking for a different set of capabilities. Number one, you need to know what you have and where it's at. That's inventory optimization. Number two is an assessment of demand. So think about, RFID being used to understand what's going into fitting rooms, how much of that is getting bought, how much demand are we generating that isn't served, in terms of what shoppers actually buy. And so I think this idea of being able to better understand the demand profile in the store is another area where RFID is really interesting. I think there's another dimension to retail that's new, and that is, the employees doing the shopping for the shopper. All this buy online and ship from store, pick up from store. The store associates need to have a different set of capabilities in order to do all that picking and shopping for their shoppers. And so, being able to use RFID for pick path analysis and optimize your pick route when you get an order to pick, that's another place where RFID is having a big benefit. We've talked a little bit about the asset protection and creating visibility around shrink, but I think there's a final one, which is, building a set of core metrics that you can then deliver to AI training models with accurate data that will allow retailers to begin to automate some of the decisions and some of the capabilities to create next generation strategies. I think that's untapped today, but I think that might be the biggest one of them all. So the biggest barrier for RFID in general is getting tags on inventory. When you have an open supply chain, think a Walmart or a Target, right? They have some private label, but they don't control all the means of production. Getting your vendors to sign up for that is tricky. And then how you get them to put the right tag in the right place, so you can read it at the retail. I think that's still today is the backbone of RFID and probably the hardest part. I heard a really interesting statistic from an analyst. He said that retailers with 10 times the profit are 160 times more likely to use RFID. He said it's the single biggest game-changing technology in retail related to profitability since the mobile computer. The value of RFID is it starts with one use case, and then it builds into, inventory visibility, builds into loss detection, which builds into supply chain visibility, which builds into, I want to better understand my demand profile, my fitting room, which builds into, I want to do some pick path analysis for my associates. And all that can be done once you've justified putting tags on your inventory. There's always work going on in the core capabilities of RFID. Zebra's partnered with Impinj on Gen 2X capabilities, which give the reader and tag more control. There were a couple stats in the shopper study that were actually quite surprising. Number one, there's been a lot of talk on shrink over the last 2 or 3 years, and a lot of focus on it, and almost half of our retailers surveyed said shrink grew again last year. I think the other really interesting stat is, in a world of scarce and expensive labor, right, getting the associates to be more productive, and 87% of our associates said it's very difficult to find help when processes or technology breaks down in the store. I thought that was fascinating, that we're expecting more and more out of the store associate, and it's getting harder and harder for them to get the support they need. I think that's what makes Zebra's strategy around the connected frontline worker and distributed artificial intelligence to make the average employee as good as the best employee, and be able to answer all those questions without having to go find the expert. I think that's going to be a really interesting development as Zebra continues to pursue the connected frontline worker.